You're watching Public Affairs. Berkowitz is my name, and politics is our game, and we will be doing politics this evening because we have as our guest Dr. Steve Sauerberg, who is now the Republican nominee for the U.S. Senate seat to oppose Dick Durbin, who is the incumbent senior senator from the state of Illinois. And we're taping this on February 17th, so it was just about 12 days ago that Mr. Sauerberg, Dr. Sauerberg, ran in the Republican primary, had a contested primary, knocked off his two opponents, and now he is the nominee. He is facing, as we said, Dick Durbin, Senator Durbin. We'd like to see both of them. We're seeing Dr. Sauerberg here today. We'd like to see Senator Durbin out here to answer questions as Dr. Sauerberg is individually and perhaps jointly right here on the set of Public Affairs. Dr. Sauerberg has been practicing medicine for 25 years.
Pretty much, yes.
Or so. And we'll come back with more of a background, but this is his first time out. This is his maiden voyage running for elected office. Is that right?
That is correct.
We'll come back more about him, but let's get right to the issues. What we're going to do is, our regular viewers would know sometimes we do the lightning round where we ask the guest to say more or less of something, what he thinks the answer should be, and then explain. And we do that for the first 10 minutes. The whole show is going to be the lightning round. So it's going to be quick-paced. And we'll start off with asking our guest, Dr. Steve Sauerberg, should we have more or less free trade?
Same is fine.
Right, the current amount.
The current amount is reasonable, you bet.
Would you view yourself as a free trader?
Yes.
Okay. Earmarks, should we have more or fewer earmarks?
Fewer.
Okay. And should we have less bringing home the bacon?
We need, if we're going to be in our current situation, we need more, but we shouldn't be in this situation. We need to discourage earmarks, but if we're going to have earmarks in this country, Illinois needs to do better.
So you're against earmarks, but if we have earmarks, you're saying you as a senator would try to get as many earmarks as you could?
Sure. Why would I not represent the people of this state?
But if you could, you would ban all earmarks and be happy to do so?
Yes, sir.
So it's kind of like disarmament. You don't want to disarm unilaterally, but once you have disarmament, you'd faithfully adhere to it.
You bet.
All right, we're moving right along. Should we have more or fewer government restrictions on abortion?
More or few government restrictions?
More or fewer than the current?
More.
More restrictions. Yes. Would you like to see the issue returned to the state? To the states?
It wouldn't bother me for a return to the state. I don't think that's really the point, but you know, I think we don't have enough restrictions on abortion in this state. We have too many abortions, and I have my own specific set of opinions on how we can handle that.
Would you like to see abortion made illegal?
No, I don't think that's the point. You know, my position on this has been the same as it always is. We have too many abortions. We have wonderful mechanisms available now through crisis pregnancy centers to change the whole climate on this topic, and we should be doing it. And that's what we want to talk about in this campaign.
Through counseling to inform the mom that she has choices, as opposed to having an abortion, she might be able to proceed with the birth and have the child adopted. Is that one way to do it?
Well, that's one thing you want to talk about, but you want to talk about everything. You want to make sure your mother is supported educationally, emotionally, perhaps financially, to know that she has options and what those options are, so that she makes an educated decision that she will be as content as possible with for the rest of her life. That's all we want. The majority of people who have a crisis pregnancy center experience are glad that they were there, the vast majority. This is something we really want to promote during this campaign.
Okay, the vast majority, you said, who made a decision, they were glad what?
The vast majority who had the experience were glad that they went there.
The vast majority had the experience of counseling?
Correct.
But still you believe it's a woman's right to make a choice as to whether she will have an abortion or not at the end of the day?
Currently it's a woman's right to make that decision, and so I think that's fine. I can live with that, but I think if we're going to live with that in this culture, then we need to do something more than we're doing for these women, because they are not getting appropriate support.
You said currently you could live, that's the way it is, and you could live with that.
Right.
But if you had the ability to change it, would you like to see a woman continue to have a choice about whether to proceed with an abortion or not, or would you like to make it illegal so she couldn't?
I'll never get the chance to make it illegal. That's not what a U.S. Senator does. I will get the chance to support strict constructionists to the bench. That'll be the only option I ever have on this topic. And I think every time we start talking about and trying to characterize a politician as pro-life, pro-choice, or whatever you want to do, I think it's a soundbite that takes away from the message. And my message is what I want to do for mothers.
But do you think people are entitled to know your philosophy on this issue? Because as you point out, as a senator, you will be sitting on the confirmation of judges and voting on the confirmation of judges.
Right.
One issue is, are they a strict constructionist or not? Some would view that as also an issue of whether they think there's a constitutional right to have an abortion as Roe v. Wade holds or not. So knowing your philosophy on that seems to be relevant. What is your philosophy? Whether you could determine it as one senator, it's important that people know, at least some people think, our viewers might think, whether in general you would like to allow women to continue to have a choice to have an abortion if they want, or to make it illegal for them to do so.
I have no particular interest in making it illegal. I want to
make it
illegal. You're not going to keep women from having abortions who want abortions. What I want women to do is be provided the opportunity to make a decision that they're happy with in the long run. I believe that decision is what we need to focus on. And this is the issue of abortion is about hearts and minds. If you want to make it about laws, you can. But in my opinion, it's about hearts and minds, and that's where we want to focus our energy.
And so once you win enough hearts and minds, women will be choosing not to have abortions. And in that sense, that's your point about hearts and minds?
Right. I want women at the end of their experience after they're pregnant to be happy with their decisions.
Okay.
That's my thing.
Legal immigration. Should we have more or less legal immigration?
We have plenty of legal immigration.
So we have the current amount. Would you like to see less legal immigration?
Potentially, maybe less. I think it depends on what happens with illegal immigration. So I think that depends on too many factors to answer very briefly.
Well, philosophically, do you think legal immigration is a good thing? People make the argument that historically America has been a country of immigrants. And over the years and over the centuries, it's brought new ideas, new energy to the country. So would you disagree with that?
No, I think that's exactly correct.
Okay.
And we need legal immigration.
Okay.
But the question is, what numbers do you need, and how are we going to do it? You know, and illegal immigration needs to be solved, and then legal immigration needs to be looked at as well. We will always, I hope, have legal immigration.
What's the key element to solving the illegal immigration problem?
I think to understand that the numbers have gotten out of control and that we need to give people reasons to leave this country on their own and see what it does to this nation in terms of our economics and everything. And then hopefully maybe we'll have a workers program, maybe we won't, I don't know. But the people of this nation have asked very clearly for us to control our borders, you know, decrease the number of illegal immigrants in this country, and then see where we're going from there. And I support the public's opinion on this one.
To control the borders.
You bet. Control the borders above all. That's the first step. That's what the people of this nation have asked us.
And about 6 months ago when you were on this show and I asked you, are fences a way to control the borders? I think you said that's an issue for experts to decide. Have you decided that since as a U.S. Senator you will have a vote on whether you favor a fence across the southern border, for instance?
Well, I think the fence in many areas has been felt to be the best option, and I would support that.
Drones, too?
If that's the best option in a certain location, that's what the experts feel, I will support that as well.
Raising penalties for employers who hire illegal immigrants, would you do that?
Yes, sir, I would. Okay.
And guest workers, industry argues it would be helpful to have more guest workers, that is, people didn't come in and become a legal immigrant, but they could come here, do the work, and go back to the country. Depending on, there'd be limits as to how long they can stay and so forth. But a lot of commercial industrial interests argue for more guest worker permits. Do you think that's a sensible argument? I think they have an argument, and I think once we solve our problem number one, which is controlling our borders, our needs will become much more clear, and we'll be able to make good decisions regarding this. The chance that there's going to be a workers program in this country is I think, significant. But I think we need to stick to point number one, which is control our borders and show the people of this nation that we're to be trusted, that politicians will actually live up to what they say for a change. Would you say immigration is one of the most important issues you're encountering on the campaign trail? Yes. Illegal immigration.
You bet.
Okay. O'Hare expansion. Would
Expansion.
you favor the O'Hare expansion that's currently seems to be underway?
It's underway. I guess we'll go ahead with it. I think that it's funny how all events seem to intertwine, but I think that some of that may depend on, I'm very concerned, let me say, with the congestion in metropolitan Chicago. And I'm not sure the exact best way to handle that. Some of that's going to be based on how we handle the immigration issue. So all these things tie together. At the moment, O'Hare expansion seems to be going. I guess we'll go with what we've got at the moment.
Congestion in what sense?
In my work as a physician, I went 8 minutes. I went from my home to my office or the hospital. It was quite simple. It was quite reasonable. Now I drive around metropolitan Chicago all the time, and it's not easy and it's not pretty, and we need to do something to improve the lives of people in suburban and the city of Chicago by improving their ability to move around.
Does O'Hare expansion make it better or worse?
I don't know. We're going to find out, aren't we? Because O'Hare expansion is underway. I hope it makes it better. You know, one of the issues that we could deal with that would make it better would be handling our immigration crisis.
But you know, one of the former U.S. Senators, Peter Fitzgerald, former Congressman Henry Hyde, the late Henry Hyde, made essentially careers out of opposing O'Hare expansion. I know it's going back because it seems to be settled now, but if you had a voice then, would you have joined those two in opposing the O'Hare expansion?
Well, at that point I might have looked at it more closely, and maybe I would have. I think you have wonderful opportunities in Rockford, certainly, where they have the infrastructure already. I hope that somebody looked at that very closely before these decisions were made, and I hope that looked at again over time. But it looks like it's a little too late to worry about O'Hare expansion at this point.
No Child Left Behind. More legislation like No Child Left Behind or less?
Same to less.
Same to less. What's wrong with it? Why do you say same to less?
Well, I think we have to have some standards, and I think there have been some benefits. And I think what's been most important about No Child Left Behind that I really like, and that's that it has really brought the discussion to forefront, and I think that's critical. I think education is a critical topic, and this has made that topic more in front of the people of this country. Is the legislation perfect? No. But some standards are appropriate. People in this country want quality education. We need to find a way to provide that. No Child Left Behind is probably a reasonable first step, but it needs to be reviewed. It may need to be modified, and we need to keep looking at this topic.
And when you say more to less, though, what's the negative aspects? It sounds like there must be something negative if you say more to less.
A lot of educators find that there's a problem.
You said same to less. I didn't mean to mischaracterize your answer.
Well, that's fine. I think folks know what we mean. I mean, the people have complained on a local level that it takes away too much of their flexibility, and I appreciate that. Most school things should be local, but at the same time, there has to be some standards to support that. So I would be for looking at this and see if we can't get a little more local control, but at the same time, you know, just because there have been some concerns doesn't mean you just throw the whole thing out.
More or less parental choice involved in deciding where kids go to school.
I think if we don't start doing better, we're going to need more parental choice. And I think that's probably the way to go here. I think we've seen various areas have variable degrees of success with school choice, charter schools, etc.
Charter schools and school vouchers.
You bet. And so it has been somewhat depending on where they've done it. But I think we need to continue to expand it and research it. I mean, there is some science in this world that can be useful. This is something that can be researched. We can see how useful it is. And we can move forward with some real documentation and evidence for our decisions. That's what we need to do here. Use a little science.
But there's been a lot of research done. Carolyn Hawksby at Harvard, both in the School of Economics, Department of Education, looked at a large number of studies and concluded school choice does work. Well, there are people who argue against that, but it does seem like the empirical evidence, one, is substantial, and two, leans on, some would say, substantially on the side of, with the notion that parental involvement, school choice, whether it be charter schools, school vouchers, works pretty well.
But I think it probably works more often than it doesn't. And I think if you continue to go, you need to continue to study and prove your case up, that this is really the way to go. I think it probably can be done, but I think to continue to study this is the appropriate thing to do. If there's some controversy left in this for people, let's resolve it. Let's continue to study it as we go forward, and eventually, hopefully, we'll have real strong answers for people so they know really what works for sure, and then maybe everybody gets on board of whatever that answer is.
More or less in terms of the U.S. efforts to win the war in Iraq?
I think right now we're doing just great.
Do you support the surge?
I sure do.
Okay, and are we winning the war in Iraq?
Yes, we are.
Okay, but you've also said, I think you've said in some of your campaign literature that we need to force the Iraqis to do more. Did I get that right?
Well, you need to force the Iraqis to do the politically difficult things, but recently they've begun to do those. There were some recent developments that suggest in the last just couple days that maybe there's better agreement on oil sharing and some other issues, and I think there's hope for this. There's nothing more critical to the security of this nation than a stable Middle East, and I hope we keep working at it. It's very obvious. I'm fascinated by people who want to stand there and say that the surge has not been successful. That is a very difficult position to support.
Would you classify your opponent, Senator Dick Durbin, in that category?
Yes, I would.
And he said that. I think he said there have been some military successes, but it hasn't it hasn't enabled the kind of, or it hasn't worked. The military successes, I think he would say, have not worked to bring about the kind of political change that we'd hoped for. And you've just pointed out, at least in the last few days, some has occurred before, but even more so with the oil sharing agreement that involves the Kurds, right?
Yes, I think it's pretty obvious now.
And that's what it is. It's an agreement that the Kurds, the sharing of the oil revenue is now, there's an agreement, and that Kurds will get a reasonable amount from that, and that was worried they wouldn't.
Right,
And,
I mean, and
I suppose the Sunnis will as well. I don't know how.
Right,
how
I mean, they're all agreeing on some kind of oil sharing as well as other topics now. You know, I don't know what Senator Durbin really thinks. I mean, obviously,
you haven't talked with him yet?
No, I have not talked with him. He obviously, I mean, here you have General Petraeus, most remarkable commander in recent history, and Senator Durbin couldn't help but support calling him names at one point. If we remember that horrible one-page ad, the General Petraeus thing.
But that wasn't from Senator Durbin, was it?
Senator Durbin had the opportunity to decry that ad and chose not to. Senator Durbin has not supported this war in any way, shape, or form. He pretends to support the military. He does not. He has been a thorn in the side of the military, and I'm sorry, but this is a guy who is not supporting the effort in any way, shape, or form, and I think he's wrong here, and I don't think he can admit that he's been wrong, and that's his business.
When you say he doesn't support the military, what would you cite as an example of that?
How about the thing with General Petraeus? How about when he stands up in the middle of the U.S. Senate and compares our troops to Nazis, our administration to Pol Pot, and Gitmo to a gulag?
Did he say that specifically? Is that
yes, sir, he did.
Words?
And all you got to do is go on to moveondickdurbin.org, and you'll have it right there for you. It's a wonderful little webpage.
Did he say the soldiers, or did he say that the military or the U.S. forces, or the U.S. in some way, was engaged in proper handling of detainees?
I can't remember his words, but again, everybody's more than welcome to go to moveondickdurbin.org and take a look at the clip. It's right there for you. It pops right up. You can make your own decision about what it says.
But in your mind, he's compared U.S. military to Nazis?
As far as I'm concerned, he's compared military to the Nazis, the administration to Pol Pot, Gitmo to a gulag. You know, just recently he's voting against the monitoring efforts we're making to secure this country and tapping telephones, et cetera, et cetera.
Terrorist surveillance program.
Terrorist surveillance program, very good. That's what it's called, and very nice. And he's voting, he is not supporting that. And so once again, he's choosing a side. I choose security. He chooses civil liberties, I guess, if you will, if you want to be good about it. His preference is to fall on the side of the civil liberties. But so far, there are no complaints about this program. If nobody complains about the program, why would you disassemble an apparently successful program?
Do you think there are people on the left who feel and some even on the center, and perhaps even on the right, who feel the program infringes their rights in terms of eavesdropping without a warrant? If a foreign person calls into the U.S. and that foreign person, say, made a mistake, dialed a U.S. citizen by mistake. In the past, people would argue that would usually require a warrant for you to engage in that wiretap. They say under the terrorist surveillance program, you don't need to.
Right.
And so you can start investigating an innocent citizen, the government can, without a warrant. I think this would be their argument, and therefore violating the Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution. What's your response to that?
There is no situation or legislation or program that's going to be perfect. Everything is imperfect, but you get a choice. You get to decide whether you're going to come down on the side of more security or more civil liberties on this one. I'm coming down on more security for the people of this country, period. You know, people sit in Congress and make these rules. Great, that's fine. But at the end, you're going to have to decide which side you're on. And mine is clearly, I'm more in national security. He's more in civil liberties. That's his business. That's my business. That's the deal.
If he says, but he believes in this document, the U.S. Constitution, and the Fourth Amendment hasn't been amended yet further, he wants to see that enforced, would you say he's acting unpatriotically because of his belief in the Fourth Amendment? And
I'm not saying he's acting unpatriotically. I'm just saying he's wrong on this issue as far as the security of America is concerned. Security first. This government primary role for the United States citizen is to protect them. That should be the major role of this government. Here we have a program in place that appears to have protected the citizens of this country, and we've had no complaints that we know of any substance at all against this program other than theoretical, and now he wants to disassemble it. That just doesn't make any sense to me. Whatever happened to common sense?
Well, do we know of everything the government's done? Do we know if they've done anything wrong in terms of wiretaps? How would we know that?
We don't know everything about anything.
Right.
That's not an option. You can make your argument on common sense, we're safe and there's no legitimate complaints that we know of, or you can make it on theoretical lines if you want. I make mine on common sense and realism. We're safer, no one's been harmed that we know, so why don't we continue to stay safe and not harm people? Boy, I don't know, it seems like a pretty easy one to me.
He might say, you know, the current legislation, the extension of the current legislation had a provision to immunize phone companies from lawsuits by private individuals, of course, represented by lawyers. It would immunize them for the actions they took to cooperate with the government on these wiretapping programs. And his point would be, maybe that was, and he said this in a press conference as recently as a few days ago, that might have been okay when the mood of the country and the concerns were what existed in 2002. But he said the program went on in secret for years, and he said the companies did not make the right demands on the government to make sure this kind of what he would view infringement of individual liberties made sense. So he said that you don't want to immunize the phone companies. If they were right, let them show that in court. If they weren't right, well, then that'll be shown, and then individuals who were represented by the lawyers could make a showing that they were wrong.
Well, there's
What's
no,
wrong?
there's
Isn't
no
that how the
lawsuit
law
that Dick
works?
Durbin doesn't like, okay? This is
But
the
is
tort king, okay? And that's wrong. How many billions of dollars of the taxpayers' money are we going to spend on this? I mean, this stuff is not free. We're paying for this. We pay for it in our phone bills or wherever, but there's no free lunch here. Sue, sue, sue.
Isn't the
I don't know
Constitution
about that.
give you the right to sue? Sixth Amendment,
It gives you the
Seventh
right
Amendment?
to sue, but
Right
it
to a
also
jury
gives you
trial?
the right to pass a piece of legislation that immunizes them. And that's what I would do.
Okay, but that takes away, in a sense, the right to sue.
On this
individuals who've been
particular
harmed.
instance, that's correct.
Of in the Constitution, it may be unconstitutional, you think?
Then let them rule it unconstitutional.
So how they'll have to take that to the courts and
That's
see.
their business. But at this point in time, I think it'd be a very poor decision.
All right, healthcare is very important, as we were just talking about before the show. You've got a specific healthcare program. Does your program, well, let me ask first, and then you can talk about your program. Should we have more or less universal healthcare?
You don't. What is universal health care?
Well, you tell me. People use it all the time. Politicians, do you know what it means? Do
No,
you ever
I
use
don't
that
know
phrase?
what that means, and I don't
Okay.
use that phrase.
I think people mean by that there's a program that's affordable by which every citizen in this country can get health care.
That's what I mean.
So you would agree with that
I
assumption?
agree. I think everybody should be able to buy their own health care policy at an affordable level so that people in this country are insured and have a basic level of decent insurance going forward. Every person should have that available to them.
Okay, so with that definition, how are you going to do that? What program would you put forward?
I put forward a private sector program.
Private sector?
Private sector
Tax
program.
credits?
Tax credits, some vouchers, whatever it takes to get people insured in this country. You're going to have to control the cost of health care first. You can't reform this health care system at these costs. But we can cut the cost of health care in this country. There's too much waste in this country on health care. We cut the cost and we make it effective or possible for the average citizen to buy their own health insurance outside of their employment arena. We shouldn't have employers responsible for this. You should own yours, I should own mine, everybody should own their own. That's the deal.
And it's a $5,000 tax credit you're proposing for a family of 4, and you're proposing a refundable tax credit, so people who don't have any income to pay taxes would still be able to get actually a grant to buy health care. Is that right?
A grant or a voucher or whatever
voucher,
fine point we pick out so that someone can buy health insurance whether they pay taxes or not. They need to be responsible. They need to be able to go on the internet or go to the local insurance agent and buy their health care policy. They need to take it seriously and buy it on their own.
All right. Now, I don't know if Senator Durbin has a specific program, but the several programs that have been floating around from the presidential candidates, some involve allowing any individual, if he wants, to buy into the federal health care program. That is the program that federal employees use, which is quite good, gives them choice of different companies, isn't in any way socialized medicine. So that would be one avenue I think that many Democrats favor. I don't know, again, if Senator Durbin does. Another is to expand Medicare, so instead of having to wait till you're 65, you could get into the government program if you choose at a lower age. Mm-hmm. What's wrong with those two programs? Those are sort of combined elements of what you're talking about.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything specifically wrong with that.
Okay.
But why do we have to have 6 different programs? I mean, why do we have to have 6 different bureaucracies? Why can't we just do this in the private sector so that everybody understands it? I mean, life is complicated, okay, and it's probably too complicated. And people don't understand their health insurance. So now they're going to understand these 12 different programs you can get into. That's wrong. One basic concept here needs to run through our entire lives in terms of obtaining insurance, not 25 different things that change all the time. Let's keep it simple so the poor people in this country can understand their health care choices and make them in a cost-effective manner and use them properly and safely and comfortably. And we do not provide that. All these complicated programs do not provide
so
that.
That fits also with your view. You favor the Bush tax cuts, right?
Yes.
You would make them permanent?
Yes.
That, in your view, is people should have that money at their disposal to spend as they see fit? Is that the reason why you favor those tax cuts?
Yeah. I mean, people use their own money much more wisely than other people use their money. So let's leave as much as we can in the pockets of the people who are in it.
We're going to continue to speak as the credits roll, but I very much want to thank our guest, Dr. Steve Sauerberg, who's come here to talk about his programs, his initiatives, and what he hopes to do as he's running for U.S. Senate. He's the Republican nominee to run in the U.S. Senate race that's coming up in November of 2008. The incumbent is Senator Dick Durbin, who we hope will join us and also answer these questions. Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, just quickly, we didn't say much about our guest, so we'll take a quick moment now to say our guest was born in Berwyn, raised in LaGrange. He's an Illinois guy.
An Illinois guy.
McMurray College in Jacksonville, Illinois. Did his in his fourth year of college, he started mid school at Rush Medical College here. That's Rush Presbyterian St. Luke's
Correct.
Hospital. Residency at LaGrange Memorial Hospital. Taught family medicine. Been practicing family medicine for about 25 years.
Pretty close.
All right. Married to Nancy, 2 grown kids. One of them's working on your campaign.
That's
right?
correct.
All right. And look, 2 quick things.
Yeah.
We talked about issues. What's the positive program that you bring? You've criticized Senator Dick Durbin here and elsewhere, but positive. What's the positive program that you bring as you ask people to vote for you as the Republican nominee for the U.S. Senate?
I understand health care, and I can solve your problem. Number 1. I understand that you're overtaxed and overburdened, and I hope to relieve that. And I hope to make your life an easier, simpler life, fairer tax system, flatter, simpler tax system, simpler health insurance, something that lets this overwhelmed feeling that the people of this nation are struggling with be decreased and have a more comfortable and quality life.
Do we need to do something about guns? Northern Illinois University, do we have to look at people who may have psychiatric problems in the past, look at that more greatly and make it more difficult for those people to buy guns?
It's going to be very difficult to. The lawyers will be hot on the trail of any infringement on the doctor-patient confidentiality relationship. It's going to be tough, but it should be looked at.
All right, but you believe in the Second Amendment?
I do.
But reasonable restrictions?
Yes.
On gun control?
Sure.
On buying arms?
Sure.
And as you look at it, one issue, U.S. Senate.